Hello again, everyone. It is now 10:48, so it is time to resume our meeting. And I hope you have had a chance to vote what you would like the panelists to discuss most. And we now move to the discussion part, which will be moderated by Sokol Vako. Sokol is a lecturer at UNCEAP, where he manages the training environment statistics and accounts. And for the discussion, we will invite all our distinguished speakers from part one and one new panelist, Ms. Baktegu Izabekova of UNDP Kyrgyzstan, who was a speaker in our previous webinar series. Baktegu is the project coordinator of the UNDP Climate Promise project on supporting the country with updating and enhancing its nationally determined contribution. Before that, she held several positions at the National Statistical Committee of the Kyrgyz Republic and was involved in several development projects. Now I hand over to Sokol, and I would just like to mention to Sokol and the panelists that we have the limit of 4 persons on the floor at the same time. So we will have to disable the streaming of some of the panelists when they finish replying to the questions, and then we bring them back for the next round. And with that, I hand over to Sokol. Thank you.
Thank you, Gosha, and I hope you can hear me okay. A good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for some of you. Thank you for joining us today. I know we have a little bit of background noise, so I hope we can sort that quickly. Thank you again, everybody, and it is my pleasure to be moderating this excellent panel. Let me again welcome everybody, and I also wanted to thank our 4 presenters. I think it was quite enlightening to hear the different experiences that the countries have had in putting together climate change indicators lists and publishing that and making sure that it is fit for purpose. Many thanks to many of you who wrote questions on the chat as well. I know Olivier and Angelica already have replied to many of the items that were put in the chat box. So I'll start toward the end here with some of the more specific questions, in particular to the last presentation that Sushil made. If you, Sushil, can quickly react to a couple of these questions, and then we'll broaden the discussion out for the rest of the panelists and some of the topics that we would like to further explore based on the responses that you gave to our Mentimeter question. So Sushil, if I can give you the floor quickly for a couple of the questions, since you were the last presenter and didn't have a chance to probably look at the chat. One of the questions, there are 3 questions from colleagues here about the work that you have done in Nepal. And some of these are simple yes-no questions. The first one is, did Nepal include the environment, disaster, climate change indicator question in its census or through a separate survey? And then related to this is, do you use domestic sources fundings in terms of developing the climate change survey, or did you receive some sort of support for that? And then the last one, again, related to the surveys and the censuses, is do you conduct this survey every year to update the indicators? So Sushil, over to you for those 3 interrelated but very important questions.
Hello, Sokol.
Yes, we can hear you, Sushil.
Yeah, thank you, Sokol. Just I also saw in the chat box also. Yes, we got some technical support from the UNECE for that climate change that survey which we conducted in 2016. Basically, on the sample design and the finalization of the questionnaire, because this is new type of survey and first time we were conducted at that time. So how we can do this survey, we got some technical support from the UNESCAP at that time. Basically, what is the criteria at that survey at that time means the respondents should be the age of the 45. The respondents should be of age 45 or more. one criteria made at that time, and the respondents should live there before 25 years. It means the respondents should have the experience of the 25 years in that locality. We made these two provision at that time, and for this we got for the sample design at that time from the UNESCAP, and for the finalization of the questionnaire also we got from the support from the UNESCAP. Other resources we got from the government of Nepal, and we conducted that survey. One thing is that, and another thing is that, yeah, we conducted this separate this climate change survey, and we also conducted this waste management baseline survey now. But basically, for the environment sector, other surveys, we separate surveys, we do not have conducted up to now. But some module or some questions on the population census, agriculture census, and other social and the economic type of the surveys, we put some environment related questionnaire or the module in that survey. That is another thing. Sakul, uh, uh, any more I have to add?
Nope, nope. Thank you very much, Sushil. That covered it very well. Thank you for rapidly getting to those questions from the chat box. Maybe we can expand now the conversation to the other panelists as well, to discuss some topics a little bit further from building upon the presentations that we had. And the first item that maybe we can start, and I would like to start, maybe Angelica, you can get the conversation started, is a little bit on the resource requirement. Obviously, many countries, as we have heard from the four presentations as well, have different organizational structures. The national statistical offices and the national statistical systems are differently organized, and you're relying on administrative data, survey, and other data sources as well. But in putting together the outputs that you talked about, maybe you can start to discuss a little bit on the resource requirement, and some details in particular on the human resource part of that, for the work that you did in ISTAT, and the work that ISTAT is doing.
Okay, yes, sure. I think, of course, it very much depends on the extent to which you can rely on existing data. So, for example, in our case, as I was explaining in my presentation, we have a pretty good basis of environmental accounts and also of other statistics. And so what is really required in this case is a coordination effort. You have to know who is the expert, for example, on air emission accounts, and explain to them the kind of indicators you need, and then again coordinate with the energy accounts expert to make sure they provide the right information. And then it might be even more difficult for the impacts and adaptation areas, of course, because in that case it's very, very likely that you also have to interact with other agencies. So it's really, I think, for countries that have environmental accounts or already have a system in place to produce SDGs indicators, most of the efforts is to coordinate rather than build the indicators themselves. So that is mainly our experience. And then, of course, in this coordination effort, one of the difficulties may be that, of course, these experts are already involved in a lot of processes. So there is, of course, a conflicting use of their time. So you have to make sure that they can also devote some time to understand what kind of product is needed and how it can be derived from what they already produce. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angelica. Olivier, I know you mentioned in your presentation that you already have a working group at the Statistics Office in Luxembourg that is focused on environment and energy. Could you give us some sense of the resource requirement for the climate change indicators that your team is doing, and how much are you relying also on outside sources, as Angelica mentioned, with having to pick all these experts in other departments within the NSO, but more broadly as well in other agencies?
Yes, thank you, Sokol, for the question. As I mentioned, yes, we have a team dedicated to energy and environmental statistics inside institute, but it's a very small team. At the beginning, we only have 2 persons inside this team. And it was also why we decide at the beginning this criteria to only select indicator for which we already have statistics. It was very helpful and interesting to see our colleague from Nepal presenting the idea to develop a survey and apply this idea. But with limited resource, and because our aim was first to put this topic highlighted in the country, we decided to not go in this direction because it will take too much resource to create a survey and to apply this survey. And then it's quite like Angelica mentioned, it was more a coordination for the Statistical Institute, mainly for 6 months, a full-time person for 6 months, I would say, to create this dynamic and the discussion. For other agency implied in the process, I must say that most of the work was to discuss about methodology. In the sense, what is the proposal from international recommendation, how to calculate the indicator, and if we are agree or not with this indicator. And it could be strange, this comments, but I must really say that it's generate a lot of discussions. For example, if you calculate the water stress, you can imagine that we have so many discussions and so many person want to present differently this indicator. And by this way, it was not a lot of hours work for other agency, but at least we could imagine, yes, 10 days, I will say, for each other agency. We have 10 agency in our working group. So in conclusion, it's not so much time, but what is very important for us is it was to put the highlighted the topic. And after that, when we disseminate the indicator, we see the result of the dissemination and the interest. And just to finish my comment, for example, we see that interest for after the first dissemination was on household sector, and that's why the second publication is dedicated to this topic. And to mention you, just this afternoon, I present exactly the result of the survey at national level. So that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Olivier, for that overview of the resource requirement in your country to do that. And I think something that Angelica mentioned in her presentation was that there was already built-in institutional support in Italy at ESTAT, because she was chair of the committee. So already there was high-level support in her team to do this sort of work. I was just wondering, Olivier, and then also I'll pass it to the other colleagues as well, but very briefly, you mentioned that you had discussions at the technical level. was there a need to have that sort of high-level buy-in for the work that you were doing, and how did you go about that, having that high-level buy-in? Because I think it's very interesting for us to hear this concrete example that you said about taxes, that, you know, the analysis you made, and this was something that was adopted as law in Luxembourg and is implemented as a tax. So can you talk a little bit maybe about that sort of dynamic in your situation, in your country?
Yes, for our exercise, I must admit that we do not start with the steps to have a support from the high level and the political level to start the work. It's probably for two reasons. First is that a statistical institute in Luxembourg is really independent from all ministries, and we could easily decide our statistical program without to refer to any minister. And the second is that we have already existing this working group, and this working group is not under a minister, is under another institution called the Committee of Public Statistics. And this committee is the committee who validates the. And this committee is we have member of all ministries, and it's also animated by the Statistical Institute. So when we have the support from this committee, we could start easily, and we have already the support of technical to start with that. So this is the experience of Luxembourg. But I do not recommend to do like this, to be honest. I prefer, if it's possible, to have further support from policymakers. Because what's happened in Luxembourg is that we develop indicator, we select the indicator, we calculate them, we publish them. After that, the ministry or different minister discovers the number, and at this stage want to intervene in the selection of indicator or on the communication, and it's not feasible at this stage because all the process is finished. And this is a difficulties in this case. If you want that your list of indicator will be used by policymakers. If you don't answer to the needs of your policymaker, they will not use your list. So that's why I recommend first to have better discussion with ministries, but directly with minister, if it's possible, to really know the needs of indicator and perhaps answer with your national list to these needs.
Very good.
It's
Thank you.
easier.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much. Laurent, over to you. Your thoughts a little bit on the human resource requirement, and then if you can build on some of the comments as well from the prior discussions here on this this dynamic on policy use and high level support for the work that you are doing. I think we have had different approaches here, right? Yours, correct me if I'm wrong, was very the output was very clear from the beginning, as you said. You know, you had something very concrete in mind, and it came together in under 1 year, which is quite rapid for this type of work. Over to you.
Yes, exactly. Well, the aim was to have something to make the theme available. So we didn't really care about what's happening elsewhere. And I would say once that the it's more like now that the climate related indicators are implemented, it doesn't make much difference resource wise. We have been publishing indicators since many years now, environmental indicators, energy indicators, and so on. And if you're doing updates anyway, it doesn't matter really if it's 20 or 25 or 30 that you have to update. Or at least in our case, it's like this because the graphs we produce online are done in a semi-automatically way. And if you had to do them by hand, then probably it would be a little or a lot more resource intensive because updating graphs is probably what needs the most time. Now, if you're counting the whole process to develop the set like we have, with all the discussions, with editing, creating web pages, and so on, then I'd say in total it took about maybe a month or two, and this split between the different persons that worked on it. So even this is not, well, that's, I'd say it's not so much work. We did it with the same thing we had to do anyway. So it wasn't that much more work for us.
Yep. Thank you. Now, if I can just quickly also bring in some of the comments from the chat as well, another question that was raised from colleagues during the registration process, which I think is relevant in the case of Switzerland, but also on the case of Nepal with the federal system. And our colleagues from Russia are asking how is the data transmitted to the Federal Statistics Office from other line ministries and also from sort of local authorities, if that's the case. And this is something that also I think Angelica touched on in her presentation as well on some of this exchange of information between the various institutions. So the question from the chat from our colleague from Russia is, how do the data developers transmit the data to your office, and who prepares the explanations for such indicators?
Well, also, some of the data is available online, so we take it directly from there, and some is not published, so we have to ask for it. And what we have is we have some kind of a database where we know exactly when data comes out, or more or less. So whenever the day arrives when it should be available, then either we go online and check for it, or we ask the responsible office or persons to submit it to us. So that's how we work on a day-to-day basis. Is that that's?
Yes, no, that's very clear to me, at least. I think maybe Sushil, if I can bring you into this conversation as well. One of our colleagues in the registration raised this issue. I believe it was a colleague from Sri Lanka about bringing together administrative data and other data sources from local level to state level to federal level. Is that something that you can speak to as far as what Nepal has done with that? And also, if you can talk a little bit more, if there's anything more to add on the resource requirement. I think you already talked a lot about the resources that were used for the survey and the census and all that. But if there's anything in addition, obviously, please feel free to add.
Thank you, Sokol. Yeah, I already mentioned that the major problem in Nepal now, we are in this federal system. We have new experience, and there are three types of government: central level, province level, and the local level. And they are independent, means they can decide their own program, all these things. No, so we are facing great problem about the data collection from the local level and the province level. Another problem is that the sufficient or the statistical manpower are not in these kinds of the provincial and the local unit. That is also we are facing the problem. And so we have now new drafted the new statistics law that is in the parliament. If it is amended, and it will solve certain problem, it solve the problem like that. Can I cover, Sokol, or I have to add more?
No, that covers it. Thank you very much, Sushil.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank
Now, last but not least, I know you've been patient with us, and good to see you again, Bhaktigul. Hope everything is okay. I think maybe since we haven't had a chance to hear from you today, I don't know if you wanted to briefly also talk a little bit about some of the activities that you have undertaken in Kyrgyzstan as part of your work to showcase some of the issues that we have discussed, and then talk a little bit about some of the resource requirements in putting together the work that you have been doing in your situation, in your country.
Thank you, Sokol. It's good to see you again. Since we have Russian-speaking colleagues, let me continue in Russian.
I would like to discuss more the experience we have in our country. Recently, we have submitted the nationally defined contribution, and the way this process was built, in order to how this process was built and how the data was necessary, and how it is related to climate change statistics. I would like to note that I fully agree with Olivier and Angelica that first and foremost we start with coordinating mechanisms, because clear coordination is required. We need to have clear distribution of rules. In terms of data provision in particular, this is one of the key stages in any process. And going back to our national defined contributions, I can make several conclusions. What are the data or resources that we're missing? As Kyrgyzstan is a vulnerable country, and we're interested in adaptation to climate change, the adaptation data and also research at regional level and local level, at national level, they were not sufficient. They were missing. Now, after we submitted NDC data, we can make conclusions on what sectors we miss data and where we have the need to improve, to develop the potential, to develop capacities. This is adaptation data, but we know that as a result of Conference of Parties 26, adaptation has special focus, and also for our country, the waste data is insufficiently detailed and insufficiently relevant. We have cooperation with national statistical committees. This is my former place of employment. I worked there for 10 years to improve statistics related to climate change, because today I am the user of the data, and I was lucky in this role because I know how the data is produced, how much time it takes, how much effort it takes, and first of all, besides coordination, this is a methodological approach, which was mentioned by Oliver as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Gul. I think we have talked a little bit about the resource requirement. I think on the end of the production process, all of you talked about the dissemination of the information and the approaches that you have taken to that. So we saw the infographic from Luxembourg. We saw the website that Switzerland has put together, and the publications that Sushil shared with us as well. I was wondering if you could share with the audience that we have here, maybe what was a lesson that you learned, or something that you wish, in retrospect, that you would change about the approach to dissemination for the work that you have done so far, or maybe something that you were thinking about implementing that you think is a useful way to reach the different audiences that we are trying to reach. So I was wondering if we can just start again from the very top. I think maybe Angelica, you can share some insights on that, some lessons learned on the dissemination part, things that you might do differently looking back on what has been done, and then maybe talk a little bit about some of the new ideas as far as dissemination is concerned in the case of Italy.
Okay, thank you. As I said, up to now, we have some channels for dissemination. Some of them relate to the inclusion of indicators in reports that have a purpose that is broader of climate change indicators, like the report on competitiveness, like the SDGs report, and like the report on the energy situation. I think that what is missing in our case, and it's certainly something that we need to do for the future, is actually showing the complete picture of that these indicators provide. And this idea of providing an overall picture was actually driving the work of the task force of the UNECE, and was really one of the key criterion behind the choice that we made of the indicators. So I think that is really needed to be able to tell a story, possibly over time, following the trends of the indicators and all of the aspects touched upon them. So yes, this is certainly something that we miss, and of course needs to be done in parallel with all of the other initiatives.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I
Thank you
don't know
very
if I answered everything.
Yes, no, that was very
Okay.
very good, and thank you for that. I think the time series component came out of that, and it's something that we have talked about as well, and having this fit for purpose indicators to meet the user needs. And I think providing the whole story, as you said, and being good, providing a good narrative with the indicators that we produce, right? It's not just about the numbers, but it's providing that narrative to make it digestible to the various user groups. Olivier, I think you showed a couple of examples already. Any lessons learned, things that you might do a little bit different if looking back on some of the outputs you have produced already, and then maybe also a little bit on maybe future outputs that you're thinking about reaching different audiences that are of importance to Luxembourg. I don't know if reaching the minister is something that you mentioned earlier as well. I don't know if you already have any plans on maybe having dinner with him soon.
Well, lesson learned. One key aspect, I think, it's really the communication relay, or the tool that you will use for communication to the user. And this is what we try in our second publication. For the first publication, we just present the indicator in a paper, and we imagine that every user will be very interested about our indicator. It was not the case. So we need to revise our communication process. And that's why we decide first to focus to general public. And for general public, storytelling is important, but they just won't have the big picture, the key message. And that's why we use infographic, in fact, just to show some comparison without going in the detail. But the issue is that you could not use the same tools to communicate with policymakers because policymakers have their own reference. And that's why we add all this additional information, like on methodology. And we need to continue to work. I think that the discussion is not finished. Question between us and the ministry, because the two may continue to be used, and it's really difficult to manage the fact we discuss about the same topic, but we have two different numbers, and it's not contradictory because in fact it's two views two different approach about the same issue, and you can do different things with the two approach. It's just that you present one approach or you present another approach. And in all case, you have, this bridge table to go from one other to confirm that the two approaches are consistent. And we do that in the methodological document. Concerning new publication, I don't know. I don't know. No answer yet. I'm a thing on that, and will be very happy from panelists and participants to this meeting.
Very good. Thank you very much, Olivier. Laurent, maybe you talked a little bit in your presentation about having to reach out to other organizations and institutions in your country and have this group put together. We often talk about communication, about dissemination of the information, and please touch on that in your remarks. But also, if you can provide some insights on how you communicated on the other side, on the other end of the pipe, so to say, with the various providers of data to make sure that they were, well informed, and what sort of relationships did you need to build in that in order to facilitate your work for the project that you had in this space?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so well, the only thing we did was to send out a newsmail when we published the indicators. So whenever we update them, it's also in the newsmail, and sometimes it's picked up by the media, sometimes it's not, and that's all we did actually. But maybe a thing that we could have done differently was to inform other offices beforehand that we would publish such indicators. The specialists knew about it, of course, because Switzerland is a small country, so we know the guys that work in those fields. They knew about it. We had exchanges concerning the indicators, concerning how to present them. But sometimes the press departments of the other offices, they were, or they might have been a little surprised about the publication and the messages that came across. So maybe that's the only thing I can think of to prepare the other offices that we are doing this, and what are actually the messages that will come across.
Very good. Thank you very much. Sushil, your perspective on dissemination and communication of the results, and what are some of the lessons learned from Nepal in this area?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Well, yeah, dissemination is the major thing when we develop indicator, or we do surveys, and we conduct the national level dissemination program, where we invite experts, stakeholders, and the media person, and in the provincial level also we conduct the dissemination program, and our publication and our reports are also available on the website of our website also. And similarly, we prepare the microdata also for this climate change survey. We prepare the microdata. Many persons from the Nepal are also doing the PhD from that data also. So these kinds of dissemination we are organizing, Sokol.
Very good. Thank you. No, it's excellent to hear that the data that you're producing obviously is getting used in so many different ways, and allowing people to benefit from that.
Yeah.
Bhaktigul, we go back to you. Maybe you can talk a little bit about dissemination approaches that you have taken, things that have worked well, things that you are thinking about changing maybe in the context of your country.
Thank you, Sokol. When we are talking about the dissemination, so the first thing I would like to highlight is the data and information should be user-friendly. because statistics has various of data users from media, from policymakers, scientific and research institutes, and even youth and other civil society organizations, and etc. etc. So the information, it's very important to have this information understandable and with descriptions how on the methodology, just to get know how to use this information. And in other things about the communication, in our country we have very good SDG monitoring platform, so which allows us to use this platform for evidence-based, to have evidence-based information and data, because even for our work as data users, we need to have reference to statistics just to get this evidence-based information. So dissemination and communication, it's very crucial in the process of working and collaboration with statistics producers and data users. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Gold, for that very pertinent remark, and I think it links very well to the next topic that was raised from one of our colleagues in the registration again, and it is with the link to the SDGs, and in particular with Goal 13 of the SDGs, which is on climate change, even though as it's mentioned in Goal 13 itself, obviously the UNFCCC is the main intergovernmental process, as we know, for climate change reporting. I was just wondering if we can again start with Angelica. Sorry, Angelica, you were the first one on the rotation again. Maybe you already mentioned about using the data in the indicator list for the climate change, and actually using that in different publications as well to make sure that it's picked up, whether it's on the SDGs or on the energy publication or on the competitiveness publication. I don't know if you had any insights to share as far as the multiple uses of the indicator set, in particular with the SDGs, and also touch a little bit also on Goal 13, if you have any thoughts on Goal 13 as well. So I know there are a lot of different strings there, but maybe you can tie them together in a nice way in your response, please.
Okay, I will try.
Thank you.
Yes, in Goal 13, this is our experience. As you know, for a while, there was no overall indicator on greenhouse gas emissions in Goal 13. Now there is one, but this didn't used to be the case for a while. And what we did for Goal 13 was actually from the beginning to introduce the both calculations, the indicators based on the accounts and the indicator based on the inventories, and the bridge between them. As Olivier was saying, it's always important to be clear about how one indicator relates to the other. So although it was obvious, and of course now this is the case, that for the SDGs purposes, the inventories would have become the primary source because they are available worldwide, whereas the accounts are not. We made this effort to use both indicators, yes, since the beginning. And also another thing is, so the idea is to show that both approaches exist, explain the differences, introduce explanation also in the metadata so that the user understands why you see two numbers. That, of course, is a big problem, can be a big problem. And another thing is to make clear what is really the value added of the environmental accounts indicators. That is, we again, in the SDGs, we published as a country contextual indicators CO2 intensity, so that CO2 by economic activity divided by value added, no? And of course, this is one indicator that is best constructed using the accounts. So then again, the choice was to use the indicators that is most suited for that specific case. And yes, that would be the idea. Explain and use the indicator that is best suited for that specific purposes.
If I may follow up briefly, Angelica, as far as you talked about the emissions by sectors of the economy and doing the intensity type of indicators, obviously energy is a big part of that. Were you in Italy linking also goal 7 with the goal 13, so the energy information and the emission information was presented rather with the same approach, so that there was congruence between the various data sources and the various indicators? Is that the case?
Not yet. In energy now we have a dialogue open with the colleagues responsible for selecting the SDGs, and is actually what we would like to achieve. This yes, coherence between indicators and the sources of information. So it's probably the next step.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much,
Thank
Angelica.
you.
Olivier, your thoughts on SDGs and how, in particular, SDG 13, but also other SDGs, if you can, for which this approach would be useful in the context of Luxembourg.
Thank you, Sokol. I'm very happy that you asked this question, because we are not good. Not at all. In the sense that when we developed the national list for SDGs, it was another group who do this job, more related to political measure. It means that the selection of indicator was based on different criteria. And at this stage, you could see that the current national list to follow climate change is different and is a separate list as SDGs national list. That means that if you have a look to SDG 13, you will not find the same indicator in both lists. Of course, globally in SDGs national list, you use environmental account for other SDGs, like to follow green economy and these kind of things. But at this stage, there is no interaction between the two, and it's a pity. Yeah, I must admit. And what I must say in terms of perspective is that the two lists are not closed, in the sense that we have this facility in Luxembourg that we could adapt the list if we want, because these lists are not referred in the legal document. That means that we mentioned the list in the existing of the list in a legal document, but we do not list exactly which kind of indicator we have in the list. So it's feasible, to increase the correspondence between the two lists, but at this stage it's not done. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier. Laurent, your views, thoughts, and experience of Switzerland as far as the link between SDGs and climate change indicators and the work that you have done. with putting together all the information from the various data sources. Has there been a link made, or is that something that potentially could be of use for that process as well? And if you have any thoughts on SDG 13 as well, please feel free.
Okay, so well, honestly, I don't really know. We didn't really worry about this. The goal, as I said, was to make this information available in the first place, so that the topic climate change becomes actually visible on our website. But afterwards, what the different user groups are doing with this information is not really in our hands. Usually for more policy related demands, we refer to the Federal Office for the Environment. We focus on the more statistical aspects. So I'm probably not really qualified to answer this question, I'm afraid. But what the SDGs are concerned, well, the context, I think, is quite different. And we didn't actually mix those two approaches. So I think the situation is quite similar as it is in Luxembourg, as Olivier just told us.
Very good. No, thank you. And if I may just quickly, sort of a follow-up question. I think you mentioned visibility being, the sort of major aim of the work that you have done. How do you test that aim has been reached? Is there some process after you publish this? What are some of the metrics, I guess, that you use to make sure that you have reached your visibility goals or targets, if you had any in the first place?
Yeah, well, they are different. We saw that when we launched the indicators, the media talked about it. It was in the newspapers and even on television, I think. And after that, we monitor, the visits we have on our website, and the climate change indicators are part of the theme which is dedicated to the environment. And we could see that after it was launched, there weren't that many more pages. There were 3 more pages, but you could see that the number of people going there and looking things up just went up. So that these are 2 ways to monitor it, but we don't go much.
Very good. Thank you very much. Sushil, over to you. Your thoughts on goal 13 and more broadly SDG linked to climate change and some of the information that you have collected. How has that fed into that process, if so?
Thank you, Sokol. Actually, for Nepal, the focal point for the SDG is the National Planning Commission, and which is our parent organization. We produce data and we produce the indicator for that also. But actually, we are not working on this, and maybe that only that the knowledge about the climate change, that kind of information, that kind of indicator we can. But we are. And what is the thing is that from the global side, Nepal specific SDGs indicators are also developed, and actually for the goal 13 in detail, we are up to now not working on that area. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Sushil. Yes, SDGs obviously big scope, lots of indicators, and lots of work to be done. I know you mentioned this already, Bhaktigul, about in your country how you already have the SDG monitoring platform, and that has been a useful tool for sharing information on climate change as well. Any further thoughts to share as far as goal 13 in particular, but also other SDGs and how you have been able to link the data on climate change with those, if that's been something that you have worked on?
I can say about the particular case on our updated NDC. So we conducted the analysis how the NDC measures and policies are aligned to our national SDGs. So this analysis shows that, of course, almost all goals are aligned to NDC measures and policies, but when we are talking about the figures, only 17 NDC measures and policies are strongly aligned to concrete SDG indicators. And I think it's not enough. So we could have more concrete examples how the NDC measures can align to SDGs. And I would like to back to my first statement on what kind of topic and what kind of components on climate change we need to work. This is adaptation part. So considering the national consequences and national conditions, I mean the climate conditions, adaptation part is very important. But this practice, I mean NDC updating process demonstrated the lack of information and data and statistics on adaptation. So this is where we need to work together in our country. So this is lessons learned from a particular case, particular process.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think we have about 7 minutes or so left in our panel. So I thought for this last round of inputs, maybe each of you can share a couple of parting thoughts with the colleagues here, things that maybe we did not have a chance to discuss in the various interventions and the various presentations. I also had something on coordination and data sharing as well that I wanted to discuss, but unfortunately we did not have a chance to go through that. So if there is something that you would like to mention as far as the data sharing arrangements that you have in your country that would be useful for other colleagues to hear about, that would be most welcome as well. So again, we'll start with Angelica. Angelica, any last minute final remarks from you on the discussions that we have had today?
I would like to report another experience, another example of use. So I don't know if it's data sharing, but it's an example of use that I think that is an interesting one. We have in Italy a project called Equitable and Sustainable Well-being Measurement. So of course, the aim is measuring progress of society, not only from the economic point of view, as you can understand, but also from a social and environmental point of view. And this measurement progress every year produces 150 indicators. A few years ago, then a group of experts selected 12 out of these many indicators to be included in the economic and financial document. So a very, very important planning document for the country, which is of course annually produced. And one of these 12 indicators, so this very short list, is greenhouse gas emissions derived from the accounts. So I think this is a very success story. It shows that that also users and also people working at the planning of the economic and financial measures are starting to be mature enough to understand that the environmental accounts exist and indicators derived from them can be used. And plus, there is a cooperation with people from the Ministry of Economy and Finance, which use data from the accounts again to produce their forecast, their medium-term forecast. So this, I think, yes, again, shows that users are getting more and more aware that of the kind of information that is there and can be used and can also be uptaken in very, very relevant policy documents.
Great, thank you. That's great to hear. Excellent that this was one of 12 indicators, which is says something. It's very catchy to this high level policy folks, and obviously use means more demand, and sort of that we get into that virtuous cycle where demand is driving also the production of our statistics and continues to build the details that we need. Let me move on. Olivier, your parting remarks, any additional thoughts from you?
Yeah, last comment, and it's a positive comment on all this exercise. Yes, of course, the aim is to produce statistics and to give some information to different users. But also for Statistical Institute, it's a very positive experience to go in this process. Why? It's because you will improve or construct a network with the different owner and producer of statistics in your country. And the advantages of this topic is it's very transversal, cross-sectoral topic, and you will certainly create new connection with administrations that you usually you do not work with them, and it's clearly help you to improve your statistics and the robustness of your statistics. And Angelica, go after the production of the it's exactly the same with in Luxembourg, with this list of national indicator, and that we continue on the topic with the same person on, for example, forest account, or not yet quality of life, but perhaps in the future in this topic, as I see in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Olivier. Laurent, your final comment, remark here.
Yeah, I would say it's important to just start small, maybe with a few indicators, and build up a full set from there. And once it's implemented, I'd say the most important thing is to fully integrate the work in the annual production, so that it becomes some kind of regular activity, and you don't have to worry about it so much anymore.
Yep, excellent point as well, about having this be part of the regular production activities of the statistics office. Thank you very much. Sushil, over to you.
Okay, thank you. As you know, as a developing countries, from the we are starting to develop the climate change related data in Nepal. We conducted the survey. Any other countries need to any support or any they can they are highly welcome. We can share our views, our knowledge. We can share, and our all these things reports are also available on the website also. And then another thing is that we are planning to conduct the second round of this national climate change impact survey with updated its methodology, with more sample size. uh, uh, in this way, we are planning to conduct second round of survey if the situation will be favorable. Similarly, we are trying to develop the climate change indicator. I think within 1 or 2 months we will publish the selected indicator which we can develop from the available data. We are working on that. Initially we are working, and we need the other countries' knowledge, all these things, to develop all these things. Sokol, now I am telling like this. Thank
Yes.
you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Sushil. And obviously, meetings like this provide a venue for us to see what everybody's doing, to learn from each other, and hopefully we'll get to do this in person soon, so that we can continue to grow the community that is working in this space. Last but not least, final remarks from Bhaktigul.
So final remark is on the importance of having or establishing the platform to bring together all users and producers at the national level, for example, with leading role of National Statistical Committee of the Kyrgyzstan, and at the regional one, as today we have, because Kyrgyzstan has already experienced how to work with this set of climate change related statistics indicators. Just need to continue to work on this to expand the relevant and necessary data or statistics to be used by policymakers, by other data users. That's all.
Yes, thank you very much, Bakhtigul. And let me again, from my side, very much thank the excuse me, the 5 panelists: Bakhtigul, Sushil, Laurent, Olivier, Angelica. Thank you very much for your presentations and for your sharing your insights and your experience with everybody here during this panel discussion. I think we learned a lot, and there is a lot of food for thought here going forward. Now, my next responsibility here is to provide a brief summary of the discussions that we have had here during this first day. I know I cannot possibly capture all the rich discussion and all the important points that were made by all of our panelists, and my job is a little bit easier here because I had the privilege of hearing from especially the 5 of you on the final remarks here. But I'll try my best to very briefly summarize the discussions that we have had, and I think we'll add to this and refine, obviously, to make sure we capture it as best we can. I think I'll start from the very last point here that Bakhtigul highlighted as well, is to have the community in place, to have the institutional mechanism in place in your country, to have the working groups in place for the compilation of climate change related indicators that are important in your country context. That is an important point. We saw that that is something that everybody did, all 4 presenters that we heard from, as well as in the Kyrgyzstan case, that there is this working group, or that there is this collaboration going on across institutions that is driving the production of this information. Linked to that is obviously adapting the information and the list to your country needs. We heard the different approaches that were taken, whether it's starting from the list that was developed by UNECE and adapted by the Conference of European Statisticians that Angelica talked about, or the approach that Switzerland has taken, with Laurent mentioning how they looked into what other people were producing and put that together for their climate change dissemination platform. So coming up with that list and working closely with the experts is quite important. The next point was about communication and dissemination. This was key to making sure that the indicator list is used by the various user groups. And you heard many great examples today on how different countries have approached communication and dissemination in easy-to-use formats, in user-friendly formats, in order to ensure that the data is relevant and fit for purpose. And then obviously the increased demand leads to more resources and more demand. So it's a virtuous cycle that we can get into. And then last but not least, some encouraging words there that we can start small. So the product that we are hearing today from the 4 presentations, as well as Kyrgyzstan, was not done in a short period of time. The work started for some of these countries in earnest 5, 6, 7 years ago. And with a lot of good coordination and a lot of good collaboration, you can get some very good outputs, including influencing taxes, as we heard from Luxembourg. So some very concrete and impactful work being done. As I said, I'm probably missing many important points that were raised, but I think that captures sort of the headline items from today on working closely with colleagues across the national statistical system, adaptation of the list to national needs, and there are different approaches to that as we heard, the collaboration across institutions, and then communication and dissemination being key to all this. Let me again thank everybody. I also wanted to thank those of you who posted questions online. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. And thank again the 5 panelists for their explanations and their patience in dealing with sometimes the intricate questions and the very difficult questions that are in this space. With that, let me pass it over to Gosha, who's going to guide us for the rest of the closing here. Gosha, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sokol, for facilitating this fantastic discussion and bringing to a close this first webinar. Thank you also to all the speakers and the participants for the rich discussion, both on the floor and in the chat, and the discussion, the registration forms when you shared your questions. I would also like to thank the interpreters, the technical hosts, and Interprefy support for supporting us today in the practical side of this meeting. So with that, the first webinar is finished, and tomorrow we reconvene the same time for the second webinar on producing climate change related indicators on energy and emissions from the system of environmental economic accounting and other sources. And we will dive deeper into the selected indicators, and we will hear about the methodology that is used to produce them and about the practical experience of several countries with producing and using these indicators. So please remember about the two pre-recorded presentations prepared by colleagues from UNSD that are part of tomorrow's webinar program. There is one on carbon account and then the other on an introduction to ecosystem accounting. We are not going to play them during the session, so please do watch them before. And we also encourage you to refer to the presentations from the previous webinar series. Some of them are already available in Russian, and in the end, all of them will also be available with Russian subtitles. We will put the link to the whole YouTube playlist in the chat, so you can find all the videos there. And with this, I thank you once again for this very rich first day, and I wish you the great the rest of morning, afternoon, evening, and wherever you are. See you tomorrow. Thank you very much.